The map most international tourists use for Brazil is missing about 90% of the country. Not as an exaggeration, as a fairly literal description of what happens when someone plans a trip to Brazil using the information that international travel media has historically provided. The map they get shows Rio de Janeiro, the Amazon, and Carnival. It shows Ipanema Beach, the Christ the Redeemer statue, the rainforest canopy, and the samba parades. It's a real map, in the sense that these things exist and are genuinely extraordinary. But it's a map of roughly 5% of what Brazil actually is, and the other 95%, a country larger than the continental United States, containing every climate zone except tundra, with regional cultures as distinct from each other as Portugal is from Romania, is simply absent from the international version of the country. Meanwhile, Brazilian tourists have been navigating a completely different map for decades. The domestic tourism industry in Brazil is enormous. 215 million people with a strong culture of internal travel, visiting each other's regions, arguing about whose beaches are best, whose food is better, whose festivals matter more. The infrastructure that resulted from this, the airports, the posadas, the road networks, the tourism services, was built primarily for Brazilians. Not out of hostility to foreigners, but because the domestic market was large enough to sustain itself without needing to optimize for the international one. The country functions magnificently for a family from Sao Paulo on holiday in the Nordist. It functions partially, and sometimes confusingly, for a traveler from abroad who doesn't speak Portuguese, doesn't know how things work, and arrived with a map that shows 3 things in a country with dozens. This is the foundational mistake in Brazilian travel, and almost every other mistake grows out of it. Arriving with the international map and not knowing there's another one. Start with Rio, because Rio is where almost everyone starts and where the gap between the 2 maps is most immediately visible. Rio de Janeiro is real and it's extraordinary. The setting alone, the way mountains and ocean and city and favelas stack on top of each other in a geography that has no equivalent anywhere on Earth, makes it one of the most visually astonishing urban environments in the world. Copacabana and Ipanema are genuine beaches worth spending time on. The view from Sugarloaf and the one from Christ the Redeemer are genuinely spectacular and genuinely different from each other, and both deserve the time most itineraries give them. This is not a case like Amsterdam or Santorini, where the famous version is a pale approximation of the real thing. The famous version of Rio is the real thing. But Rio is a city of 8 million people, and the version of it that exists on the international tourist circuit, the beaches, the 2 viewpoints, the Lapa nightlife district, the Santa Teresa neighborhood, is a narrow corridor through a complex and layered city. The favela communities that dominate the hillsides above the tourist circuit are not a backdrop. They're home to a significant percentage of the city's population, and some of the most vibrant music, food, and cultural life in Rio happens there, accessible through reputable community-based tourism operators who work directly with the residents. The Zona Norte, the northern districts where samba schools rehearse year-round rather than just at Carnival, where the Maracana sits in a neighborhood that isn't designed for tourism, where the Feira de São Cristóvão hosts the largest northeastern cultural fair in the world every weekend. This is also Rio, and it's a Rio that most international visitors never reach, because it's not on the international map. The safety question needs addressing directly, because it shapes decisions before anyone even arrives, and the shaping is often inaccurate in both directions. Rio and Brazil broadly have genuine security challenges. This is true and should not be minimized. Parts of the city have serious crime issues and the appropriate precautions, not walking with phones or cameras visibly displayed, using ride apps rather than hailing taxis on the street, avoiding certain areas at certain hours, not wearing expensive watches or jewelry in public, are real and worth following. Ignoring them because everywhere has crime is the overcorrection in one direction. The undercorrection in the other direction is treating all of Rio and all of Brazil as uniformly dangerous in a way that closes off the actual country. The tourist corridor in Rio, Ipanema, Copacabana, Santa Teresa, Lapa, the viewpoints, functions at a level of safety that is entirely manageable with ordinary urban awareness, the same awareness you'd apply in any large city, from Naples to New Orleans. Fernando de Noronha, the island archipelago off the northeastern coast, is among the safest destinations in South America. The Chapada Diamantina in Bahia, the Lençóis Maranhenses and Maranhão, the historic colonial cities of Minas Gerais. These are not the Brazil of international security headlines. They're places where the main challenge is getting there, not staying safe once you arrive. The blanket caution that keeps many international visitors inside a tiny, overmanaged sliver of one city is itself a kind of mistake, costing people an enormous country in exchange for a narrow corridor where they've been told it's safe. Now, the geography that the international map is missing, because this is the part of Brazil that will surprise even people who thought they knew the country. The Nordest, the northeastern region, is where Brazil is most itself in ways that have nothing to do with Rio or the Amazon. The coast of Ceará, with its sand dunes and lagoons and wind conditions that have made Jericoacoara one of the world's great kitesurfing and windsurfing destinations, while also being one of the most beautiful beach environments in South America. The Lençóis Maranhenses and Maranhão, a national park of white sand dunes interrupted by hundreds of freshwater lagoons of the most improbable blue and green, flooded seasonally by rain and creating a landscape that looks like nothing else on Earth. This is not a niche destination for adventurous travelers. It's one of the most visually extraordinary places in the Western Hemisphere, and most international visitors have never heard of it. Fernando de Noronha, an archipelago of volcanic islands 350 kilometers off the coast, with some of the clearest water in the Atlantic, protected marine environment teeming with sharks and turtles and dolphins, and a strict visitor limit that keeps it from being overrun. This is among the best island destinations in the world, full stop. And it attracts mostly Brazilian tourists with a small international contingent who happen to hear about it. Minas Gerais, the inland state south of Bahia, contains the most intact collection of colonial Baroque architecture in the Americas. Ouro Preto, a former gold mining city in the mountains, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site where the 18th century townscape has survived largely intact, with churches containing works by Elijah Dinho, the Brazilian sculptor who worked despite leprosy, tying tools to his arms, that are among the most significant religious art in the Western Hemisphere. Diamantina, further north in the same state, is smaller, less visited, and arguably more beautiful, a living colonial town where Juscelino Kubitschek, the president who built Brasilia, was born and whose childhood house is a museum nobody is queuing for. The food of Minas Gerais, feijão tropeiro, frango com quiabo, pão de queijo in its original form rather than the frozen version the rest of the world has imported, is broadly considered by Brazilians to be the most comforting and representative regional cooking in the country, and it's available in the kind of simple, wood-table restaurants that exist for locals rather than tourists. The Amazon deserves honest treatment because it's one of the three things on the international map and also one of the most consistently misapproached destinations in Brazil. The Amazon is real and it's irreplaceable, and visiting it matters, both as an experience and in a less sentimental way, because community-based ecotourism is one of the economic arguments for preserving forest that would otherwise be cleared. But the Amazon that most international visitors experience, a few nights in a lodge near Manaus, a boat trip to see the meeting of the waters, where the dark Rio Negro meets the sandy-colored Amazon and runs alongside it for kilometers without mixing, is a genuine but limited encounter with something vast beyond comprehension. The Amazon basin covers 40% of South America. The lodge near Manaus is one point in it. The wildlife that makes the Amazon legendary, the jaguar, the river dolphins, the extraordinary density of bird life, requires more time, more depth into the forest, more expert guidance, and more patience than most itineraries allow. The visitor who spends 2 nights and expects to feel they've understood the Amazon will leave having had an interesting experience in a large river environment and having not really understood what they were in the middle of. Give it more time, go with a guide who knows what they're doing, and manage expectations about what is likely to be seen on a first visit. The Amazon gives proportionally to the time and attention invested, more than almost any environment on Earth. The language question is the one that most distinguishes Brazil from every other country in South America and that international tourists consistently underestimate. Brazil speaks Portuguese, not Spanish, and the distinction matters more than it might seem to travelers who assume South America speaks Spanish, and that the difference between Spanish and Portuguese is like the difference between British and American English. It's not. Portuguese, particularly Brazilian Portuguese spoken fast and informally, is sufficiently different from Spanish that confident Spanish speakers are often surprised by how little carries over in a real conversation. The tourist infrastructure in Brazil, built for domestic visitors who all speak the language, is significantly less adapted to English speakers than the tourist infrastructure of, say, Peru or Colombia or Argentina. Menus in restaurants outside the main tourist areas are in Portuguese. Road signs are in Portuguese. The Uber driver doesn't speak English. The woman in the posada in the Nordeste speaks Portuguese and possibly some Spanish and nothing else. This isn't a complaint, and it isn't a barrier to a rewarding trip, but it does mean that learning a few dozen words of Portuguese before going, more than most travelers bother with for any Spanish-speaking country, pays dividends in Brazil in a way that's more pronounced than almost anywhere else in the region. The last mistake is Carnival, and it's a mistake in both directions. Carnival in Brazil is real, and it's extraordinary. The Rio Parade at the Sambadrome, with the samba schools whose floats and costumes and choreography represent months of preparation by entire communities, is one of the most genuinely spectacular public spectacles in the world. Carnival in Salvador, in Bahia, is an entirely different animal. Not the Sambadrome parade, but a street party of 2 million people following Trio Elétrico trucks through the city for a week, the most visceral and participatory version of Carnival that exists. Carnival in Recife and Olinda in Pernambuco is older and in many ways more culturally rooted, with frevo and maracatu rhythms that predate samba and with a street energy that mixes costumed carnival with genuine folk tradition. The mistake that some international visitors make is avoiding Brazil entirely during Carnival because they've heard it's crowded and expensive and chaotic. It is crowded and expensive and chaotic. It's also one of the most extraordinary things a person can witness, and treating the chaos as a disqualifier rather than the price of admission is to miss an event that exists nowhere else on Earth at this scale and with this cultural depth. The opposite mistake is going to Carnival in Rio without understanding what that actually involves: the prices, the crowding, the need to book accommodation a year in advance, the safety calculus of millions of people in a compressed area, the reality that watching the parade at the Sambadrome requires tickets that are not cheap, and planning that starts months before you leave home. Going to Rio during Carnival without preparation is not spontaneous. It's expensive and stressful in ways that a well-prepared trip to the same event is not. The country underneath the international map is the country that Brazilians know and love and argue about with the fierce regional pride that characterizes a place where someone from Rio and someone from Recife and someone from Porto Alegre are, in meaningful cultural senses, from different countries that happen to share a flag and a language. Accessing that country requires getting past the 3-item international checklist, learning enough Portuguese to meet people where they are, understanding that the infrastructure was built for someone who already knows how Brazil works, and then going anyway, with enough flexibility and curiosity to let the actual country come through the version you arrived expecting. It will. Brazil is too large, too various, and too alive to stay hidden behind its own postcard for very long. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.